Loneliness and isolation are sometimes unfortunate byproducts of the freedom our career choice brings, so often heightened by an illusion of community on social media. So on today's show, I'm doing something different. I'm combining 3 separate interviews with Luna Red Films, Omega Weddings, and Joe Torres in the hopes that I can highlight some part of our collective experience.
I don't like to see us pigeonholing ourselves. I don't like to see us cannibalizing off each other as well, creatively.
And I think it was realizing that we had potential and that, like, you can't be like a 9-trick pony. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really hard to do that. It was spreading us really thin. So I think it was, rather than being spread thin, we wanted to focus in, get better, and make like high quality stuff.
The work I create is a reflection of me in the sense of it's how I see the world because of the things I've been through.
My name is Ben, and this is Make Better Wedding Films.
Since as long as I can remember, I've been into art. I won't say photography, I won't say video, I've been into art. Even being a kid, like I would do voice acting of Jim Carrey. Like my mom has like these VHSs of like me like impersonating the Grinch, and then I got into drawing, and then I wanted to be a comic book artist, and almost every avenue of art. I used to write poetry. I kind of explored it. The only thing I never got into was music, to be honest.
I have a music background. I have a degree in music, and that's just where my creativity starts to flow. I'm going into my 11th year of doing weddings. Then I met Tucker actually through Instagram. Actually, we were following each other, and that's truly how we started talking.
When I met Courtney on Instagram, he was working at a place doing kind of like commercial stuff, and it was called Omega then, and that was before Omega Weddings, and he didn't touch on that, but there's tons there to unpack as well. But so yeah, we met over Instagram. I was just doing portraits, and I was a new guy with a camera around town, and I shot every day for like over a year. I was just shooting. If I wasn't shooting, I was editing it, or I was planning for another shoot. And we came across each other, and I saw him like in a studio, and I'd never seen a studio with my own eyes. And I like messaged him. I'm like, whoa, like you're in a studio, that like, can I come see that, you know? And so I went to meet him, and that's like when we met. We worked for a while doing commercial stuff, and he was doing weddings, and I hadn't really went into that yet. I wasn't like trying to avoid wedding scene, but I just like hadn't made the thought process to go make money that way yet. And yeah, I shot like 2 weddings so far, and then he offered me like to shoot a wedding under Omega, and I was like, dude, like, yeah, of course. And I started in photography, but now I'm doing mostly video. So we kind of both do video. That's something we could talk about, as well as we started out photo video. We started out video with just Courtney. Then I came to the team, started adding photography. We do it together, and we shot like 70 weddings together, like in a year and a half, 2 years. Just flew through a bunch of weddings together. So that's kind of how it started, and it's evolved, and we've added team and taken them away, but now we're trying to niche into like kind of luxury video.
It wasn't until my wedding, our video was awesome. It was a really good friend of mine who I went to high school with, and it just kind of felt like an episode of The Office. What we were disappointed in was our wedding photographer, where the video felt very us. It was authentic to who we were. Like me and my wife, we were like, oh my God, this is great. Like it gave that feeling of like, I wish you were there. Like you should have been there type of deal. Like if you weren't, you missed out. But when it came to our wedding photos, they were pretty pictures, and that kind of bummed us. You know, over time we've come to appreciate them, sure, but they're still like, oh damn, we wish they had that us factor, right? A lot of it was very posed and all that stuff. So, and I was like, oh man, no, like I want to get into this and give couples a completely different experience. I want them to have them through and through from beginning to end, you know? And like, so I started wedding photography in 2020. And then I realized slowly it kind of just chewed at me. Like this, I'm a big lover of film. Any movie, ask me about it. Like I always thought I would grow up directing movies. And I started to realize like more and more the photos were good. I was getting better. but it wasn't telling the story I wanted. It wasn't enough. I was like, okay, that's cool, but I'm like, man, this would be really cool if it was in video. And so like that's when I was like, okay, let's start doing video.
As we can see, some of us, like Courtney and Tucker from Omega, have the vision from the get-go. Others, like Joe, slowly discover it along the way. And some, like Carlo from Luna Red, need a little nudge out of the door.
I just come out of film school. I was writing this TV show. I was kind of a bit lost. I didn't know where I was going, you know, and my dad, who's sort of like been the guy who's always been like giving me advice about life and all that sort of stuff, and you know, I've taken a lot of inspiration from him. He was like, well, why don't you shoot weddings? And when you come out of film school, you're just like, I don't want to shoot weddings. That's not. And in 20,
it's beneath me.
It's beneath me. I'm supposed to be the next Scorsese. Yeah. You know, I'm the next De Palma or something bullshit like that. You know, and he was like, no, just why don't you shoot weddings? It's like, it means that you get to do what you love to do. You get to tell stories, and you get paid for it. You know, and it's like. You want to be this starving artist. You want to be like the person that's like, no, I'm striving for. I'm an auteur. I'm not a wedding filmmaker. I'm not a wedding videographer.
Yeah.
And then that first deposit lands in your bank account, and you're like, well, fuck, it's not bad.
Yes.
But like you sort of quickly get over that, and I got into it just as DSLRs were becoming a huge thing. I'm that old. That the 7Ds and the 5D Mark II, the 5D Mark III came out, or the 5D Mark II had come out, and then the Mark III had come out, and people were like, "Whoa, shallow depth of field! Oh, this is just
obsessed with it."
Whoa, I remember that. Yeah, and it's like, what can we do? And people Frankensteining their fucking cameras to look like a $70,000 rig or whatever. Yeah, and I got into a bit of that, but for me it was like, I don't know, there was something like eventually I sort of just found that there was just something nice and comforting about shooting weddings. And the more I shot them, the more I realized that I could tell someone's story through my own prism and through the way that I wanted to tell a story. I didn't have to do it like everybody else. And I think everybody else has sort of figured that out too. They can do it their own way. You see a sort of plethora of styles and videographers who are like really showing off their personality. And, the more I did it, the more I was like, I got to make a short film every weekend, for me. And, for me, it was like, I got to express, for me, it was like a form of self-expression. I got to express who I am as a creative, or as a filmmaker, or as a storyteller, or whatever you want to call yourself. I got to I get to show that form of expression. I got to sort of put myself out there in a way through someone else's love story. And, I'm a romantic. I think I've been told a lot, particularly by my fiance. I don't know. There's something about it where it's like, I like being around them. I like being around, weddings. I like being around couples who are, into each other and are having a great time and are laughing and smiling and kissing each other and showing that vulnerability, off to the whole world, off to their friends. There's something really, really sweet about that. And on top of that, the more technical side of it was like a lot of the best cinematographers out there started off as documentary filmmakers. They started off running and gunning and trying to figure out what the best light was with the most minimal equipment that they had, or like what the best shot was, with whatever money that they had in their pocket at the time. And I sort of just found that was kind of like what I was also doing in a way, and it sort of just meant that like I got to be a better shooter the more weddings that I did, and there was more of a creative outlet for me to this than what I thought previously. I don't know, and so like it was my dad who suggested that, and so like I named the company after his favorite song, because he gave me such a piece of great advice that like I couldn't help but
respect that somehow.
Respect that and like and cherish that, and like the name of the company is a tribute to him. Is a tribute to like he changed, like that advice changed my life.
Whether premeditated or not, we have found ourselves in this fascinating, exciting, exhausting, and creatively fulfilling career. One of the things that fascinates me most about observing this industry is seeing where people get their inspiration from. What unique combinations of ingredients have come together to create someone's artistic voice.
Commercials intrigued me, and like how people see something, and you can look at 5 different clips, and you can have 5 different editors, and they're all going to do something a little bit different. They're all going to pick different music, and I think it's so beautiful how their brains work, and just bringing that together. So for me, bringing stuff together and having that music background with movement in that, one of the things that I push into really, really hard with Omega, and I think what differentiates us from a lot of people, is I make my music work for me. So like when I'm going on a music bed and I'm picking a song, sometimes I'll take the last chorus and I'll start with that, and then maybe I'll dive it down and I'll go into some kind of soundscaping for a second, and then I'll come back up and I'm in the bridge for a second, but you would never know. But then maybe I want it to go down again because there's going to be this really emotional part and I want the mom to talk. So I destroy songs. Like if the artist actually saw how I did it, they probably hate me. But in the way that
They would, because they would respect
Yes.
that you respect the song enough to know what part of the music's trying to say
Yes.
something and how to work that. And yeah, no, absolutely.
But people are trained for that, whether they realize it or not. And I'm talking more about the consumers that are hearing it. Because when you can see stuff line up, when you see stuff hit, when it goes down and it's able to go back up and everything is just flowing and cutting together, it just creates this beautiful thing. So I feel like that's the biggest aspect that I bring to the pod. I don't know about you, Tuck, but...
Yeah. Something that makes me like creatively tick when it comes to that kind of thing. I don't know. I really love just like ideas. I feel like when I was doing portraits, I was always taking an idea and making it a photo. Whether it's like someone dropping apples outside of a convertible red car with red apples. Like it would be things like that. I would just like think of a small idea, and even if it was just like a lighting thing, like if I just wanted to show depth. So like I'm inspired by, I really don't really consume a lot of wedding stuff, to be honest. I really just follow a couple of photographers that I like love their film photography. But other than that, all my inspiration comes from DP work. I follow a ton of like director of photographies that shoot for Nike and Adidas, but not like the big commercials you see, like the small individual like kind of stories. Like I love just like a lot of directors I follow. Eye Candy on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen that page. It's like,
yeah, it's a
crazy.
great account.
There's a guy in LA. He's shot by NW. He does stuff for like ASRV or whatever that is. He's amazing. His studio stuff is just like out of this world. But that's like kind of the season I'm in right now. We're finishing up these edits, and then it's get in the studio and it's shoot portraits for like the next 3 months for me. And just like lighting, just I don't know. Like Courtney kind of said, I love editing, and I've learned a ton from Courtney when it comes to the music. Like I cry on here doing these videos because it gets emotional. But I love lighting. I love just finding a good color scheme and going, oh look, we can actually make something that looks high end. We just got to get in the studio and play around. And it's the off seasons for me that I feel like I charge up and I like go into the wedding scene with. But that's kind of like what makes me, I feel like I get creative. It's just like I consume a lot of other people. I just love like short stories and like watching people's quirky movements and amazing editing and cutting, and their color is like out of this world. You're like, how do you get this? Yeah.
I forgot to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
I forgot to add my inspo because I think this is actually kind of funny. I actually don't consume any other wedding videos either. I did at first, but comparison and just seeing it and like, I would watch someone to get inspired, but then I would go to start editing and I'm like, wait, I'm like editing exactly like this person. And I'm like starting to put it together and I hated it. So for me, I actually stay away from other people's wedding stuff other than my friends on Instagram. But for me, Netflix documentaries are one of the biggest inspirations for me, and then Disney movies. I know that sounds really weird, but Disney has shaped me, honestly. Like Tucker knows I'm a freak. You can like play 3 seconds of like
It's
pretty
weird.
much any Disney song and I can tell it to you in like 0.5 seconds.
Like, that's not even a joke. We were with another wedding photographer, and he would like play the beginning of a like just like the first chord, and Courtney's like, "Oh, do you want to build a snowman?" It's literally that fast. It was so weird, but yeah.
But yeah, I would say Disney and just Netflix. I love how Netflix, especially the documentaries, how they're laid out, and they're so they just keep you intrigued the whole time, and that's like how I do my trailers. And like, I want people to be like, even the people that are watching their own video. Like, I hate when people will put together these segments that are these long like things because they feel like they have to draw something out. It's like not everyone wants to sit there for 15 minutes and watch your wedding day. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If there's 15 minutes worth of it, I hope it's 3 days. If it's 15 minutes, it's not just one day. But I would say, like, Netflix is so good about, especially with their documentaries, just keeping the consumer like just engaged the whole time. And they're just the way that they'll bring stuff in, and like how they're so non-traditional with how like they might start something. You know what I mean? It might feel like more of an ending, or more like like, okay, wait, why did it start like this? Or this is weird. Why is it super silent right here? And that's how I go into every one of my wedding films. Is like, it's a different way to tell the story. I could do cookie cutter on every single one of our wedding films, but I think that's what honestly keeps me in the game today, is because I'm always feeling inspired, and I'm always feeling like I want to tell each story differently, and each story deserves a little bit of difference, but also with like that engaging twist and just different things. And this is the song they picked. What? There's like a choir screaming in the background. This is crazy. What? And like, just different stuff like that. I've always loved I think that's what set us apart as a company, just because I've always been that person to take those risks. And not everyone loves it, but the people that do love it, it's worked.
I think people need to learn both disciplines. I think videographers should learn photography, and photographers should learn video. Now, if we're talking about cinema, that's an entirely different thing, of course. I think the term cinematic gets thrown around like popcorn. It gets thrown around so much. Like, slow motion, is that cinema? Like, I don't think so.
This is the thing. I think, honestly, the lines are just too blurred these days.
Yeah, now.
Because there's things that end up on the movie screen that can't hold a candle to what gets put up on YouTube for free. Yeah, in terms of storytelling, quality, even cinematography these days and stuff. Like, I think the line between video and cinema and videographer and cinematographer and all these sorts of terms and boxes and definitions are a little less defined these days, I feel. Which I kind of like.
Yeah.
I like that things aren't necessarily binary between like these two worlds, and that you do play between them. And like the fact that you can get, like Oscar-winning films shot on iPhone that are gritty and raw and like very video. That's nothing new either. You look at the likes of like the Blair Witch Project and all these kind of found footage things and stuff. Like, you lean heavily on the kind of videography aesthetic. But I kind of like that. I kind of like when lines are blurred. But going back to movies, and especially if there's anything else, like where do you kind of draw your inspiration? Like, you said that you love movies and stuff. Is like, are there particular directors, or is there any other? Are you still drawing inspiration from, say, art and drawing and things like that, or where do you kind of pull inspiration from for your work?
In terms of like my editing style lately has been inspired from Nolan. Kind of the concept of how he edits two timelines going in polar opposite directions, right? So a recent wedding film that I delivered, I kind of did that. So while the getting ready is happening, the build up to the first look is also happening while seeing like the ceremony and stuff. And so kind of letting those two timelines eventually just converge and let that build up. The other thing is just looking and watching a film and understanding where's the camera relative to the light. Like, a lot of people don't understand shooting shadow side, or keeping slightly off center while shooting. Even if you're shooting in light, like if your person is lit, you can still shoot off center, so that way you're kind of aiming still a little bit towards that shadow side, so you have that depth. Like, I was just watching The Greatest Showman the other night, and just kind of seeing like, okay, where's the camera? Like, where are the lights coming from? How are they shooting into the lights? Or are they, or how are things backlit? How are they moving the camera? When is the camera moving? I think paying attention to those things is really critical. And and then applying it to your own films. Like I used to move a lot, like a ridiculous amount. And now I try to, like, if my couple's not moving, I'm not moving. If my couple sway, I'm going to sway. So kind of like just that mimicking psychology
the energy
of
of what's
too.
going on. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I think cinema, like movies, films, like cinema, like we need to treat that as sources of inspiration. And I think we need to be reminded of that. And the amount of conversations that I've had with people where they are wedding, like they shoot weddings, but they don't watch films, kind of boggles my mind a little bit, because it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, not what are you doing, but like, well, where are you filling your cup from?
Yeah.
Because if you're copying, like, it's the same what we said earlier.
Yeah.
Like, it depends on the source, isn't it? If you're copying from the best, then yeah, it's going to be a crappier copy, but at least it'll still be a far better copy than what, like, you do, you know, copying like another wedding filmmaker, because they've gone to the source.
Yeah.
You know, like, I ultimately, my philosophy is people should need to watch more movies.
Yeah.
People should go to, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a wedding filmmaker, you gotta, like, hit up the cinema, hit up film festivals, watch as many movies as you can, and, like, broaden your horizons too. Like, don't just watch whatever is trending on Netflix at that time, but like really go, okay, well, what's a foreign language film that I can see? Well, what's a documentary that I can see? Like, what's, you know, like, I sort of just feel like we need to.
Okay, well, So let's maybe steer our audience in a direction. If you could, you know, as a public service announcement, steer wedding filmmakers towards some films, towards some directors, towards some cinematographers, what's a sort of go-to list? A kind of like wedding videographers who haven't watched too much cinema starter pack.
I mean, like, if you want, you can start off with like the film bro, you know, version of that, which is like Nolan, Tarantino, Scorsese, all of those things. Yeah. But then who are they inspired by? Yeah. No female insight, exactly. Rachel Morrison is a good cinematographer. Ari Wegner, good Aussie female cinematographer, great Aussie female cinematographer. Like, Mandy Walker, another one. She's great cinematographer too. Like, these are people that I really love. You know, she shot Elvis recently. Rachel Morrison actually shot Black Panther as well, and Ari Wegner, she shot Power of the Dog, which is just great. But she also shot this like really nasty, like low down, like this really grimy film called Zola, which was based off a Twitter thread about like this like, it's a Florida story through and through, but like it's shot, I think it's shot on like 16 mil, and it's grimy as hell. But like, you can't walk away from that not being like inspired by something in a way. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's just the way that they use light and color and all that sort of stuff, like there's something in there for everyone, even as nasty as like the subject matter is. If you're going to like, if you have a filmmaker that you really like, I use Scorsese as an example because he's kind of like a library of like the things that inspire him, and he's not ashamed of that either, which I find really cool. So go and watch Shutter Island, which he thinks is not his best film, but then he'll go, well, The Red Shoes inspired me, this film inspired me, that film inspired me, and there are all these sort of like films from the 50s and 60s and the 40s that have really like seeped into his psyche, and just being like, he's then projected it out for the rest of us. You know, we think it's come from him, but it's come from somewhere else. If you want to talk about, you know, cinematographers, Bradford Young is one, and he shot Solo, which I thought was really cool because he's this kind of like very, if you listen to him talk, he's just sort of very artistic, very sort of like, but he shot this like Disney film. Yeah. But it's probably one of the best Star Wars looking, it's one of the best looking Star Wars films I've ever seen, you know. There's so many. I mean, like the god Roger Deakins, obviously, you know, he's someone that like inspires a lot of people, but like there's so many to name. I mean, Jonathan Sela, he shot John Wick, but like he just makes it look just glossy and beautiful, and you know. He made it look like a film that a film like John Wick is not supposed to look like, you know. And then they sort of like expanded on that with I think his name is Dan Laustsen, who then shot 2, 3, and 4, and he's made them look like these beautiful like the early the MILF pictures when they like first did Technicolor and all that sort of stuff. I'm starting to sound like a real fucking jerk off here.
No, I love it. No, but this is the thing, is that I love that like you are inspired by this and stuff. And what's always stopped me from, I think, really diving deep on getting inspired by cinema is something about it, I always struggle to like connect the dots between what they're doing and what we're doing. And so, like, do you have certain things that you're like, because like, yeah, take whoever, Deakins, for example, like,
yeah,
you can't just like rock up to a wedding and do a lighting and rig setup like Deakins would do, and like
you can't.
How are you? I guess passing that information and going.
You obviously you're not going to do like you're not going to show up and do like a 2046 orange rig like he does in that film. Obviously not. But like you are going to do a beautifully backlit silhouette. You know, you are going to be able to use, you know, the inspiration from I have this shot that I like to like the Sicario shot, which is the soldiers walking at dusk, I think it is, and it's just this beautiful gradation of blue straight into like night, and I'm always going to try and find that shot when I shoot a wedding. You know, you'll always find those little. You don't have to be like, I have to shoot. Like, you know, you don't watch Infinity War and be like, I'm gonna do this. You know, that's the thing I'm gonna put in a wedding film. No, you find these little moments. You know, if you watch Into the Spider-Verse or Everything Everywhere, like you can go, I want a match cut. Which is something that I've seen a lot of people do now, you know, where it's, I've done it.
Or like shoot wider to get that dynamic kind of...
Exactly,
you know,
I shoot wider. I want to get more of a sweeping vista, or, you know, just like little things here and there, like the dragging shutter that I mentioned. It's just like, you don't overthink it. There's just like little bits and pieces. There's a shot in Social Network where Andrew Garfield is going to a bank, and it starts off, and he just walks straight into focus. Like, it starts off completely out of focus. And he starts off completely out of focus. And he just walks straight into focus. They don't rack focus.
No.
He just walks straight into it. Like, he hits his mark.
He racks,
Yeah, he racks in. And that's it. Like, that's a shot. You know, there's a shot that I stole. I did on a wedding back in April from the Raid 2, where it's just these three guys in it's an Indonesian action film. It's just these three guys walking in a prison during the rain, and it's like this nice, and there's a fight's about to start, and it's just this cool like slow-mo thing from behind, and the camera's just following them. And I was like, I'm going to use that for a wedding one day, and I did. You know, it's just these little things that, like, you know, you like, it's like you just want to find these little bits of these little nuggets and gems of inspiration from somewhere, you know, and cinema is that kind of, like, movies are that library where you get to do that. You know, you don't want to limit yourself to the source of just other people's wedding films, as good as they may be. There's so many fucking good wedding filmmakers out there, but like, they're all getting their sources from movies. You know, they're all getting their inspiration from movies. A lot of them are. You know, you can copy the match cutting from Black Swan, where she's walking and it's like, you know, it's passing through that time, or the fountain, or whatever. Like, it's just so many like different places that you can get. Don't overthink it. Just, you find that thing. You know, I like this silhouette shot. There's a silhouette shot in Prisoner that Deacon shot, where it's like they're in the rain, and it's like it's being backlit by a petrol station in the background. It's simple. You know, that's something that I try to do. If people are outside in a reception area and like it's being lit and they're in foreground, I just try and, like, you know, expose for the reception area and, like, you know, try and get them as dark as possible. It's just stuff like that, just like little things like that, and it just makes all the difference. You know, you sort of forget about, you just sort of let go of the idea, eventually let go of the idea of just, I have to capture everything, to being like, oh, this would be cool. What about this? You know, how about that? You know, what about this? You know, it's just, and then that way people eventually end up leaning towards the things that they really, really like. I like silhouette. I like sun flare. I like neon lights. I like it when a street is dimly lit and there's like, I can only use one's light source. That type of stuff. That to me is cool. Someone else is going to find something else that they really, really like, that they really gravitate towards. Not because it's something that they have seen it and they copied it and it's cool or whatever, but it's because for them that's what they really, really lean into. That's what they gravitate towards. I always say, like, just do the thing that you just can't stay away from. And if you'll find that the more films or the more books or the more art that you go and sort of consume.
Traditional cinema, commercials, studio photography, Disney films, wherever you get your inspiration from, it's important to be intentional about it. This is something I've talked about many times on the show. Seeking out inspiration from your peers through platforms like Instagram not only leads to a more diluted creative voice, but can lead you down the path to something far more damaging and toxic: comparison culture.
I think a lot about things like imposter syndrome and, particularly in this industry where it's very, can't help but compare yourself to other people as well,
And everyone's posting their shit, and you always feel bad if you're not posting or what you're posting, or seeing the weddings that you want to get. It's rough, and it's toxic, and it
is.
Everyone, I feel like everyone faces with it, and no one really talks about it.
Yeah, it's interesting that no one talks about it too. It kind of disappoints me a little bit because there's I feel like people bullshit themselves. I feel like people are lying to themselves and saying, oh no, this is all great. We're all doing this thing where we're sort of chasing the next trend, we're chasing the next thing, the next reel, and we're all sort of
scared about protecting their image. Crafting their image, protecting their image, protecting their brand, their fucking brand.
Yeah, you got to protect the brand. You got to protect the brand, which is weird too, because it's like we're not yes, we make money, but we're not like multi-million-dollar companies. We're not Nike or McDonald's or something like that. We're not like these huge there's this debate happening currently on Twitter, not Twitter, but it's this debate happening kind of in the online film world where it's studios are now calling films content, Yeah. And I kind of feel the same way about small businesses like videographers and photographers and stuff. Once you start calling yourself a brand, once you sort of start to worry about it, you lose something. You lose a little bit of your humanity there, that, and maybe I'm sort of overthinking it, and maybe it's probably maybe I'm making it deeper than what it actually is, but I sort of just feel the more we sort of buy into this kind of manufactured image of ourselves, the more we kind of maybe lose the love of what we're actually doing a little bit. I know that that's what I've felt sometimes, where it's I feel like I've got to keep up this image of what people perceive of me, even though sometimes it might not be who I am.
100%. Yeah, and I saw a fabulous post just this morning with someone basically saying content creation is the new 9-to-5 rat race. And it's so true. Everyone's just trapped in this rat race of just perpetually crafting their persona to the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know when that happened. It feels like, it's sort of we've kind of kicked the social part out of social media. Now it's just media. We're all kind of these. We're media managers more than anything else. Content managers. And the weddings that we shoot are just content more rather than memories for the people that we shoot them for.
We straddle this line between a job and a craft, a job and a hobby, basically. And the hobby side of us wants to pour all of ourselves into it and always be trying something new and stuff. But then there's the other side of ourselves, which it is a job, and it's wedding after wedding after wedding after wedding. And how do you guys balance that kind of, I guess, for want of a better word, not getting burnt out, putting all of your creative energy wedding after wedding?
Talk, I'll let you start on this one.
Yeah, that's how
Sorry,
you know.
that sounded so pointed. That wasn't.
That's how you know he has a lot to say about it. He's like, I'm gonna get my thoughts together while you go.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have to recharge with things that aren't weddings. So I also do my own thing outside of weddings. I shoot my own things. I shoot headshots. I shoot, very short, like small commercial stuff. And like I said, I do a ton of portraits and I don't make really any money on them because it's always just like something I want to shoot. And I feel like I allow myself to put more into weddings if I know I'm going to give myself something to look forward to. And that's kind of how I do it. I want to pour as much as I can into it. Timeline is a real thing. So like if your film is due, I know that I'm not just going to mess around and try to find a unique story to tell if I need to have it out. I'm not just going to go edit up until 6 minutes and tear it back and be like, not good enough for my creativity. Like I think I'm pretty content with, sometimes it's kind of easy to impress people that haven't really done a lot of video stuff, so you can put something together and they're going to love it and you don't have to push your creativity like where you've never done it. But I think I find it pretty easy to just focus on the story that they have and like get that message across. And as much as I can do during that time, like be creative, think of a cool cut or an amazing shot I got that I can, put into that. But it comes with like we definitely had a crazy season and, we're still working on edits from fall and, we still have those and we're, backlogged, but it's a real thing that you have to balance because it does come back to bite you later when you're, maybe you can't really see the light at the end of the tunnel and you're like, wow, I just have edits on edits. But to me, I just like tell myself that, there's a lot of jobs I could have. And I'm blessed to have this one. And I also know that as soon as I'm done with these edits, I'm about to go in the studio, rent some lights, do some fun stuff. So I'm not saying I've never got burnt out, and I don't think Courtney would ever say that either. But I think it's just having a little bit of appreciation, understanding that hard work and places you want to get to come with that kind of thing. But I think we've definitely, to end it with something like to acknowledge that I have had that, like next year we're trying to dial it back a little from this year. We've realized that, whoa, maybe that was a little ambitious. Could we ask you the same thing? I feel like that's just like a good thing to share with people.
Around like the burnout and like managing that. Yeah.
And I don't want to get you off topic, but also
No,
if you want to answer the same thing, like what makes you creatively, like what recharges you or what makes you tick. Because I feel like that is something that we all can learn from, really.
Absolutely. I
wanted to ask that
I love it
earlier,
when
but I
it
was
gets
scared.
throws it back. Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, like, because I've literally just gone through a process of being pretty severely burnt out, to be honest. And I think what I've learned from that is exercise is a big one. Like, like sort of protecting the physical body of me as well as just like the mental and stuff is really important. Being I guess across organizational side of things. So like for me it was always trying to hold everything in my brain and always like making decisions and trying to be across everything and just keep everything up here led to a lot of burnout. So I spent a lot of winter diving into a lot of my admin process workflow, getting everything on that side of things rock solid so that when it comes to the day, I don't have to hold all that stress. So that's been a big thing for me going into this season and this summer, being like, all of the stuff that stresses me out is taken care of and I can trust that. And I can just focus on the things that I get excited about with my work. So all of that plus then, the exercise and being okay balancing rest and work and family and work and friends and work and stuff. And then the final piece is kind of going back to what you were saying, Court, around like not looking at other people on Instagram as much. It's hard with me with the podcast. Like I need to kind of be dialed in with the industry. And there's an element of that I can't really get away from. Being really intentional around trying to step away from comparison culture, because that was something I got a bit trapped in.
That can be rough.
Yeah, so a lot of those elements sort of all just got thrown in the melting pot of why I got pretty burnt out pretty hard, and what I'm trying to sort of learn from going forward.
My hope is that this cautionary tale of the dangers of comparison culture doesn't leave you feeling flat and helpless, but rather emboldens you to seek out what truly makes you tick on a deeper level. It sometimes feels like we are swimming upstream against a raging river of information, inspiration, and aspiration being thrown at us by the minute. To finish today's episode, I wanted to give my guests the chance to reflect on how far they've come and what they're excited to be working on moving forward.
For when it comes to my films next year, I just want to be more streamlined in the process. Like, I want to get sometimes I would go to a wedding, I would shoot a bunch of stuff, and I'm not going to touch it ever again. I want to go into it more with like just knowing what I want to shoot exactly and focusing on that. Even just like when it comes down to the smallest details, I just want to make it more artistic, bring some of my photography skills into the video side, and I just want to feel more comfortable with that so that my films have like a higher end look. And then like something the learning curve is pretty big, but like editing, I have a long way to go. I feel like I'm like 200% better than I was last year, but just like when you watch Netflix or you watch some of these other people, you're like, oh wow, yeah, I definitely could get better with my sound design or with my colors. So I think it's really just I'm feeling comfortable with the cameras and things like that. And I think for next year, it's just focus on storytelling and capturing it in a better way. I would say those are.
I would say, are you like putting together, like, I guess, like shot lists and things like that? Because like that's sort of something that I've been like playing with. Trying to like remove the, I guess, decision making process on the day, because I feel like when like as soon as the stress elevates on the day, you go back to your safe spot.
Yeah.
Whereas I found if I've kind of like pre-done the creativity, I could that is my safe. I can just like reach for that. So is that something you're doing, or is it more just kind of
that's kind of what I was talking about? Because right now it's like, okay, I know usually the venues we go to, you know where the good spot is. So like you go to the good spot because that's like where the good, but does it always serve the story? Well, sometimes it can, and sometimes it doesn't really matter. But like what I want to do is exactly making sure that where are we doing the speeches? Like, and it also comes to them. This is something I've talked to Courtney about, is pushing our couples to kind of give us more upfront, and tell us a little bit more about, how they met, where they met, what was going on, so that going into the day, you're like, hey, this makes more sense to play out here. And giving an action that can actually take up a sequence in a video, like point A to point B. I feel like that's another thing. But yeah, I think shot lists. What do you use for shot lists? Do you use like a Manila, or what's that one?
Yeah, I've kind of I like, my life is in Apple Notes, and I've kind of got like sort of parts of the day sort of skid like in little Apple Notes folders, and I just sort of like chuck a few sort of screenshots of things
That's
to kind of
cool.
like that I can sort of just dial in on.
Yeah.
I never end up opening it on the day. It's more like I do all this like pre-work and then just hope it just goes in there.
Yeah. I think thinking about it
occasionally
is
I'll open
huge.
it up, but
Yeah. Definitely thinking about it beforehand is huge, and just having an idea of what you want to shoot so you don't have to be in the middle of them going, hey, first looks in 5 minutes, be creative right now.
I often though like will get to the edit and look at my footage and going, I didn't do what I thought I wanted to do. Oh well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
I relate to that. But yeah, hopefully I answered it. I can't even remember at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me is just getting to know my couples better. I think there's a lot of pre-process that you can do, and I think us as photographers and videographers can always do a better job at. Not that anyone's doing it bad. I'm sure there's people out there who have like some locked-in process, like Dr. Phil, we're going to get to know you kind of thing. But for us specifically, for me specifically, I'm trying to think through in the off season on how can I intentionally get to ask the right questions, because I think sometimes the best interviews that I've got out of my couples and the best letter readings and stuff like that, because like again, I'm not there to produce something. I'm there to help elevate. I'm hopefully helping help provoke emotion, remind them. That's the one thing that we do a lot on the wedding day. The brides will be like freaking out and like doing this different stuff, and then she'll sit down to read her note or her letter that she has to read to her fiance, and she's like, okay, and I'm like, okay, hey, we're gonna take a pause for a second. We're gonna take a breath. You're gonna remember why we're here. You're gonna, and then, you know, like I want to be that friend. I want to be a friend to my couples, and like, you know, any way that I can help coach them and get to know them better. And the pre-process, you know, like when they do book with us, hey, what does that look like for you guys with Omega? Hey, you're part of the fam now. We're gonna take you out to eat, or we're gonna do this, or, you know, like whatever we can do to make that relationship better. It's the footage is only gonna get better because they're going to feel more comfortable. Because if you think about it, it's really intrusive, like what we do, truly. Like, we have one meeting with a couple that admires our work enough, and then we, you know, show up and we film them, and they're supposed to be really comfortable in front of a camera. And most couples do a really great job, but I think the more we can do in the pre-process of getting to know the couples, they're only gonna feel more comfortable and wanting to be themselves, because usually we're kind of their lifelines on the wedding day, because there's crazy uncles out there, crazy moms, crazy aunts, and they're just like, take me away, come on, let's go do a couple session or something. So yeah, I don't know if that really answered it, but for me, it's more of just learning how to be closer and relate to my couples better.
It's been a very interesting journey, because you know, you start off with just thinking like, oh, if my work's good, they'll come, right? Build it and they'll come.
False.
Yeah, super false. But also a big part is personal connections, but that's something I've always been, that's just who I am, me personally. I mean, the number one thing for me has always been just like, how can I help? Like, that has been me all my life. Like, that's why I went into a degree of XPhys when I did, is because I enjoyed helping people. I didn't realize like I can do the same thing in art, because I didn't know what I didn't know. But as I've grown, I'm like, these are people's memories. This is documentation that they're never going to get back. You're never going to hear grandma's voice again once she passes. You can, if you have video. And when I'm talking to my clients, I kind of, not to sound morbid, but I tell them the truth. I'm like, guys, listen. And it's not to sell them on video, but it's when I'm asking them and trying to get to know them, and I really want to know what's important to them. I talk about it. I'm like, listen, what does it look like in 20 years when you're watching your wedding film, knowing that grandma or a parent or someone close is no longer with you? And then they kind of sit back and they're like, yeah, we should probably have video.
Before the pandemic hit, I was just on the verge of discovering who I was in terms of as a business, as like a wedding filmmaker and all that sort of stuff. And then the pandemic hit, and I felt like I kind of lost that a bit. I felt like I kind of lost my way. I didn't really sort of know who I was and didn't know what I was doing, because you couldn't do anything, you know. And so going forward, that's something that I want to tap back into again. When I talk to people, friends of mine in the industry, they have a very clear idea as to who I am. It's the same with my fiance. She has a very clear idea as to who I am. She sees the potential. So I want to be able to discover that for myself now. I want to know who I, like, creatively, who am I? What am I doing? Like, what is it? Rediscover the things that I love. Because it's been a hard few years, and I think that I don't think we've been very honest with ourselves in terms of how hard it has been. I think we're like, yeah, everything's open, but like, I don't think we've like fully wrestled with what has happened and the way that the world has changed. I don't mean to get really like full on about it, but this is thoughts clanging around in my head. But creatively, that affects you. That affects what you do. You know, and so for me, I'm like, I want to be able to like rediscover my love of a thing. You know, not like chase the past, but like find out who I am and what it is that I love doing in this, and then grab hold of that and then fucking move forward with it. Essentially.
Yeah. I feel like right now we're at the stage of like, we're preparing for the opportunity. We know it's coming. We've built momentum, and anyone that uses camera, I feel like sometimes are a little bit of perfectionists, and like, we have a long way to go, like, to perfect. You know what I'm saying? It's almost never attainable. But like, we know how much things we can make better and get better at. And I feel like right now we're preparing for that opportunity, for that couple to get in front of us and be like, let us make this film we want to make about you. You know, I feel like that's where we're at. I want to work on the craft and like find my style, get locked in so I can tell the story as, streamlined as possible.
I would love to compose someday. I think it'd be really cool to compose my own pieces for wedding films and being able to make the music work for me rather than me work for the music. Even past that, I think just getting with the right people, I don't know if it's necessarily networking. I think it's just necessarily just kind of rubbing the shoulders with the right people and gleaning from the right people and just being available and ready for whatever opportunity comes.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. I had a lot of fun piecing this together for you. If you'd like to listen to full, unedited versions of each of the interviews, you can find them over on my YouTube channel. Links to each of these will be in the description. And finally, if you haven't already seen, I'll be attending the incredible Amar workshop in Colombia this September, alongside an absolutely stellar lineup of Bottlebrush Films, Gianni De Silva, AK Films, and William Sarmiento. Information will be down below, and I would love to see you there. All of the music featured in today's episode is available on MusicBed and is linked below. And that's all for this episode. I will see you in the next one.